Magic, witches, and devils, strange and wonderful sculptures. You'll find it all in this book. Hello and welcome. My name's Ryan, and let's take a book look at Shaun Tan's The Singing Bones. The first thing you'll notice when begin flipping through the pages of this Illustrated Brothers Grimm volume are their teeming with moodily photographed, rustic, abstract sculptures. And the next thing you're likely to notice is that only an excerpt from the story's text accompanies the illustration. This is more of an art book, and the artwork is harnessing the feeling that the story is conveyed to the artist. This book's artwork largely features a stark gray palette with pops of vibrant, warm tones like reds, oranges, and golds. You'll also find a great deal of texture throughout the pages: rough-hewn clay, sand, old nails, and freshly picked berries. There is a tactile quality to the Shaun Tan sculptures. They feel primal, as if they were made in the long-ago age of the world, when the stories were first being shaped, and that perhaps the sculptures came first. Neil Gaiman. Here we have Shaun Tan himself describing how he arrived at the visual look of the book.
To say a little bit about the work itself, because it's quite an unusual one for me. It's probably been the most enjoyable project I've worked on, and something of a throwback to childhood. As a kid, I did far more sculpting than painting or illustration, and I'd often come home from school and spend the afternoon in the backyard hacking away at a piece of rock or plaster or stone or making something out of clay. And I did this with no particular purpose in mind, and I think that's probably the basis for all good art, is to, do something in a purposeless and disinterested way, just for the hell of it. And when approaching this project, I was so stuck by how to interpret Grimm's fairy tales that I guess I resorted to that old childhood muscle memory and just going at it with a kind of intuitive impulse that normally I would apply more thought to, but in this case I just thought, well, I'm just going to make these funny little sculptures and see what happens. And I was happily surprised by the results, and I hope you are too. It's some of the most intuitive work I've done, arriving unusually naturally and easily, with far less hand-wringing that is usually associated with my projects here in this little cell I call a studio. And the result is that the work looks really strange to me, which is actually quite ideal. I was often working on these sculptures nose to the grindstone, and then stepping back and looking at them and just thinking, what the F? And I think that's a really good reaction from one artist to their own work, and it usually means you're on the right track. If you can say that in a positive way, where, what is this thing, but I still like it.
If you're interested in taking a book look at The Singing Bones for yourself, check with your local library, and I'll also leave a link down below where you can get a copy. The many tiny sculptural scenes capture a somber, ominous mood. Tan combines the traditional media of the sculptures and found objects with photography and even at times digital manipulation. You can see the difference between the original sculptures and the effects of well-lit photography, as well as what a bit of digital sorcery adds to the image. So many of the images cause the viewer to interpret the art, to ask questions. With this, the boots of buffalo leather image, all of the robber characters are faceless. Is this because they figure into this story as a collective rather than having an individual identity? This facelessness theme appears in other group identity characters such as the 12 Huntsmen as well. We also find a good number of scenes where ordinary objects of tiny scale become transformed to a grand scale in this miniature world. Tiny rocks, nails, and grains of sand become whole landscapes. A good number of the strange creatures in this book have a sinister or even threatening look, but occasionally some of them are adorable, such as these Hans my Hedgehog or Thumbling sculptures. What have been some of your favorite images from this book look? Let me know down in the comments. We have this broad-shouldered silhouetted figure, and the lighting on this piece almost feels like it'd be right at home as a Batman cover. And I don't know about you, but I would love to have a couple of candle holders that look like this amazing crab-like creature sitting on my dining room table. Here we have a gathering of undead figures getting up to all sorts of things. The crude faces have the look of little Jack Skellingtons, which Tim Burton is an influence on the artist. As a child, Tan would illustrate poems and stories. He had a particular fascination with drawing robots, dinosaurs, and spaceships, and later became a fan of the Twilight Zone TV series.
It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
And books that dealt with similar themes, with Ray Bradbury being a favorite. Tan had a diverse range of interests, so much so they didn't know what he wanted to be. Originally he studied to become a geneticist, but eventually set himself on the path to becoming an illustrator. Shaun Tan claims a wide range of influences. Here are just a few. Tim Burton, Terry Gilliam, Hieronymus Bosch, Rene Magritte, Ralph Steadman, and various textures, incidents, and things you find throughout day-to-day life. What The Singing Bones proves is there's no right way to make art. If the artwork is interesting and captivating, if it excites the imagination, then the way that that image came to be is irrelevant. I couldn't really find a place to put this in, but just check out how gorgeous this cover is. That shininess just on the sculptures? That's called spot gloss. Do you have other books that you think should have a book look? Let me know down in the comments below. Click on the first video to see more about how Shaun Tan made this book, The Singing Bones, and more. And if you want to discover new worlds between the covers of books, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for future book looks.